Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dynamic Character Productions' continued coverage of Rites of Passage All-Stars. I am your Sunday show host, John, joined this week by two absolutely fantastic guests. First and foremost, we have maybe the biggest robbed goddess of DCP history. We have Lo Murray here from Trinity Falls, unceremoniously having to leave the game because doggy daycare closes too early. Lo, how are you doing?
I am doing great. It is bright and early on this West Coast. Blame doggy daycare for any and all issues, but I'm so glad to be back with my DCP fam. Thanks for having me.
And audience, like, you may know me as the face of the Sunday show and the voice of the Sunday show, but I am so pleased to have the brain of the Sunday show here today. I am joined by production member Dr. Carrie Underwood.
Oh my gosh.
Carrie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Doctor. Thanks for having me. I mean, I guess I put myself on the show, but yeah.
So for those who don't know, Carrie is the person who arranges all the guests for the Sunday show. Carrie is the person who gives me all the notes for the Sunday show. That's why Carrie's the brain. And we're so lucky to actually have her today because she hides herself away from us. And it's going to be really fun to just discuss these last couple of episodes with you, Carrie, and with you as well, Lo. But let's get into it right away, right? It's the Sunday show. We're having fun.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
We start off this first episode this week, episode 5. We have Simmons' confessional about Maddie being his number one. And you, the audience, might be thinking, wait, Simmons, you betrayed Maddie, you voted out Danny. What's going on? How is this possibly true? Well, it turns out Maddie and Simmons have been number ones pretty much since day one. Mm-hmm. The two of them got into a very early friendship, and it blossomed. It's the type of friendship you get in these orgs sometimes, where you find that one person you really click with, you connect with them, not just on a strategic level, but just on a personal level, and you enjoy their company. And that's what we really had with Simmons and Maddie. So despite the fact that Simmons has, his Exile Island boys with Andrew and Austin on the tribe, Maddie's the person who really put in a lot of effort to talk to him, to connect with him, and to just make him feel comfortable working with her. And despite the fact that we have this Danny blind side, it's a really good move for Simmons because he's really securing Maddie as his number one in an alliance no one else is really seeing. So, what do you make of this Maddie Simmons dynamic? Is it something you think could last, or is it just, something that's happening in these early stages of the game?
No, I think there's something there. I mean, I think back to the conversation they had after the Danny vote, and I could tell Maddie was really blindsided by how Simmons voted, and Simmons really knew, it came off that he really struggled with not telling her. And so, it was a game time decision, but I think he has seen the error in that. And, it is a low key alliance. And so I think it would be best for them to keep it that way, as long as they possibly can. I could tell there was at least a very authentic relationship between the two of them after that blind side. And so since then, it hasn't been, or it's been going in the same direction.
Gary, how hard is it to maintain a secret relationship like this? Because it doesn't seem like anyone's really talking about Simmons and Maddie being together at this point in the game.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, so I think that they became allies night one early on. And we just did not have really that much footage about it. We knew it was happening because we saw them talking a lot, but this was really the first time that we were able to include footage in the episode. And so it feels like their alliance came out of nowhere, but it was pretty locked in. And they have such an interesting relationship because they want to work together so bad, but Simmons keeps blindsiding her. And it's it's interesting, because it's they both want it, but he keeps messing up. I don't know. I've never seen anything like this before.
Yeah, it's a really different strategic relationship and like I said, like friendship that these two have spawned here. And to really show the dynamics of it, I've got this week's secret scene, which is a beautiful confessional from Maddie. And I know I'm talking about my sister a lot, but I have to. Like, she's on the season. I can't not. So I have this secret scene here for us. And it's, well, it speaks for itself. So let's tune in and take a look.
When Danny was voted out, he made this for me, which was our Alliance logo. And I wasn't like a big fan because Mike's name is on top and there's just like a bit of hierarchy stuff going on. So I gave him yesterday before all of this stuff. Thank goodness, because whatever. I sent him a draft 2.0 that looks like this. And so there's some key parts about this. Number one, our names are in a circle with double ands so that there's no hierarchy reflected. Mike's name has Simmons, which is very good in light of the new information and thinking that I'm working with the other Mike. And also, it's actually a pie chart, but you just can't tell because it's filled 100% with color. So if he chooses properly tonight, I'm going to send him a sticker or something with it. And actually, maybe if he doesn't choose properly tonight, I'll still send him a sticker.
So there we go. These two are so tight that they are creating different logos for their alliances. They are
That is so cute. It's like next level because like people come up with alliance names, but I've never seen anyone come up with an alliance logo.
A logo.
That's so funny.
Yeah. And like the thought process of the logo too. It's not just, hey, here's this logo that represents us. It's, hey, this is a circle to show that we're working in unity together. There's no hierarchy. We are both equally in this alliance together. Okay. And it's a very Maddie thing, if I'm being really honest.
That's good to know.
It's
you're
quite a Maddie thing. Yeah. But it's one of those things that like, this is how closely these two are working together, that like they're having these really fun moments together, which sometimes we don't really associate with the way people are playing games, right? Where if this is a strategic alliance, you're not going to this extent, right? Like this is a personal alliance for the two of them, where they're just in lockstep together and they really want to continue working together, even though Simmons is making some decisions that, you know, seem to favor his game more than Maddie's game, with like the Danny boot, the Mike boot, or the Sarah boot today. It's a little more explained than what we saw in the episode. We'll get to that when we actually get to the vote. But it's there's this illusion that Simmons is playing a lot more for himself, but in reality, him and Maddie are in lockstep, strategically thinking through everything other than that Danny vote together and working towards, I mean, what we get to at the merge, right? So
yeah, and I think another thing that clip really shows us that we don't get a chance to see in the episodes is their relationship was actually so much fun. Like, yeah, it had like a lot. Okay, they were like low lows, but they were also really high highs. So like, it makes sense that they wanted to stick it out together because they just had like so much fun hanging out together and playing together. And so like, even though Simmons kept messing up, like, you know, it's like sometimes you're like able to it's like, it's okay if it's a friend, like this is worth it in the end.
And just shows how much trust they have, like, or at least Maddie has with him, you know, like you can only let a blindside happen so many times or like be left out of the conversation before you move on. But like, she's laughing about it and she's making iteration number 2 of their logo. Like, you know, it's just, it goes to show that there's a lot of trust there.
I know for me, I'm like, if someone screws me over, I'm like, forget you, F you, I'm so salty, this is the end.
But
I know. And she's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. We're going to just keep doing this. Just very forgetful.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because like, as Maddie's brother, you know, she talks to me. As a production member, I couldn't talk to her during this time period, right? We have an entire 10 days where Maddie can talk to me and I can be like, okay, sure. What are you thinking? Like, that's it. That's all I could say to her for like this 10 days. So I'm seeing these behind the scenes and I can't comment on them at all. And like, but what Maddie was really relaying to me in this portion of the game is she wants to play with trust. And like, ultimately that's what drives her decision later in this episode, is wanting to play with trust. And she's committed to Simmons at this point in the game, wants to keep working with Simmons. And she feels that if she changes the way she's approaching the game at this point, it could ruin that relationship she has with him. We get to our first changeup of the game at this point. I mean, arguably the first vote was the first changeup of the game, but we're at the first swap. And what we see here is we see our 2 tribes going to 3 tribes. And from a production standpoint, Carrie, what did we think? Like, how did we come up with the swap idea? What was the mechanics behind the swap? What were we thinking?
We just like change. Okay, so going anytime you go from like 5, okay, anytime you have like 3 tribes or 5, it's going to be tough. And obviously, like, we're trying to like test relationships. There's so many pre-existing relationships and different dynamics, and so we wanted to just like, you know, see how all those different things played out. And so the best way to do that is to give like different players an opportunity to play with different people. And so we're trying to put these 5 players in different groups.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And low, I mean, going from 2 tribes that are like decent numbers, right? Like,
Yep.
Obviously both tribes started with 9, are down to 8 and 7 at this point. And, you know, splitting them into groups of 5, like there's nowhere to really hide in a group of 5. You started your game on a tribe of 5. How do you navigate such a small group?
Especially I mean, as far as it is in the game, as a viewer, I loved it. I was like, ooh, this is juicy, because one, I liked that it started with 2 tribes of 9 because there's more room for plays. So I think it made the first couple games really interesting. But now when you're on a tribe of 5, like you said, John, there's really no hiding. Like it is, you have to be transparent and you have to be quick. And so either you're the first one making the move or you're adjusting as quick as possible to what you're hearing up until the moment you show up to tribal. And so I know in Trinity Falls, I was the first one to put Mike's name out there, and that's what everyone latched onto. That was not my intention. And so when you, and thankfully it went my way, but it very well could not have. Like, it either goes your way or it doesn't when you're on 5, and you have to take that risk. And so I think you have to play a lot. You just have to play a lot quicker when you're on 5 rather than with 9. You can kind of wait and see where the chips fall before you make your move.
It's really interesting that you say that you get like quicker too, because this is kind of the only instance in the game where the players got more time to work things out too, because with, you know, the way a week works, and the way scheduling works, we know Wednesdays are pretty busy for people playing a Survivor. We get that. They have a bit of a dedication. There's an hour chunk that they tend to be committed
Sometimes
to on
other
Wednesdays.
things happen on Wednesdays.
Sometimes, but like, also we have 3 production members who podcast on Wednesdays too. Wednesdays not a good day to do things. So we had decided, you know, they're going to get 2 days here. It's how we ended up incorporating the high rollers room into this season. Is we were giving them an off day on Wednesday because we respect Survivor.
Yeah, often.
Let's be real. we respect Survivor. They have an option to do an off day if they really want to, but hey,
who actually did? Let's be real.
Yeah, right. And before we get to that, though, we have the mechanics of the swap, because this swap's really interesting, because we see the Castaways have this option of choosing between Ian and McKenna. They both have their urns, and they can pull it out to figure it out. So the way we did this, we put 3 of each tribe name in each of these urns. And I don't think the Castaways ever picked up on this, but you could almost game the system through odds to figure out which tribe you could end up on if you had caught on to that. So the way we see the swap breakdown is we have the brand new OSA tribe, which has Lex, Kylie, Austin, Garsow, Taryn, and Brittley on it, which is like our most even swap. It even has the person who originally swapped tribes back in that first episode. Then we have two situations where we have a 4-1 split. We have the new Ignis tribe, which has Ashley, Shea, Andrew, Zucker, and Jeremy. And then we have that new Fumo tribe, which has Simmons, Austin, Moorhead, Mike, Maddie, and Sarah. So it's really interesting seeing the way that this broke down, knowing that there was this possibility of like figuring out what production's thinking. And you could be like, okay, so many people from McKenna's urn have already ended up on this tribe. So I have a higher opportunity to be on that tribe if I pick from Ian's urn, or vice versa. Like if you wanted to not be on a specific tribe.
Yeah, I didn't even think
but
of
it's
that.
just the way things fell. It's so small. It's so hard to actually do.
Yeah.
It's so hard for it actually like to maybe pick up on it, but it was a possibility. Players, you weren't gaming hard enough.
I'd be interested to know if Lex figured that out halfway through, because that the way his brain works, it's very possible.
Yeah.
yeah, that's a very good point. So we go into our first challenge with these newly formed tribes. We get this memory challenge. And this is a challenge we've run before. We ran it in Sahara Dunes, but that was just with dice. It was dice numbers. That's the infamous challenge where Landon comes in and tells Alanis he has no dice, so he can't compete in the challenge. But he's not telling his tribe that. He's just going to pretend he sucks.
Oh my God.
Yes, that did happen, remember.
Such a moment. Such a moment.
But in this one, we took different supplies that the players were given, their solo cups, their pencils, their ping pong balls, all these different things, their dice, and we oriented them in a very specific way. So with different directions, different tilts to them, like the way they were facing, the dice had to have a specific number on it. The one thing that they didn't have to do, which may have confused some viewers, when we made these pictures, the ping pong balls we had were of different colors. The ping pong balls the Castaways were given were not of different colors. So that's why you didn't see them having to match colors. They just didn't have the colors to match. So we said, don't worry about color, just worry about the way things are oriented here. Mm-hmm. Man, this new Fumo tribe sucks. They are so bad at this. They didn't win a single round.
I don't know, what it is about, like, okay, it really doesn't make sense because Maddie is smart, like, she's very smart. Simmons is good at challenges. I don't know why this tribe can't win. I don't know what it is.
It's interesting. This is like the original Ignis tribe too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm like, well, it kind of carries over because the first couple of numbers were rough. But again, even then, I was like, why are they doing so poor? Like individually, they're all really good challengers, but collectively, it's just not math ain't mathin'.
It's not the name that's cursed.
So we get into like these new tribe dynamics. Everyone's kind of talking about how they're feeling about their tribes. We have the Fumo tribe saying, "Oh, this is great. We're all with Ignis. Easy vote, Sarah. Easy, very easy." Well, little did they know what was going to happen a little while later. And then we have the same kind of mentality happening on the new Ignis tribe with, "Oh, Andrew's kind of the odd man out. That's fine." And OSA doesn't even have to worry about it because they're not going to tribal council. They get a whole extra day just to like hang out and get to know each other without any pressure.
Valuable.
We get, we have Shea's confessional, and I mean, Shea's confessionals have kind of been a highlight so far of this season.
Yeah,
Shea's such
amazing.
a character. He's so amusing. We have him talking about it no longer raining, sunshine. Everything looks good with this new swap. And it's the dynamic we see in this new Ignis tribe is so interesting because we have a lot of shifting mentality. We see Andrew puts in it's impossible for us to show how much work Andrew put in with this tribe over these 2 days. So you have to keep in mind, we're reducing 48 hours of footage down to an hour. with this
Yeah.
specific segment of the game. So it's a lot. It's a lot.
He did a lot of work.
Andrew puts in a lot of work. Yeah. Carrie, please go.
He really did, sure. So I found all these confessionals. Well, first of all, his strategy was like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to individually talk to each person and see where their head is at, not letting them know that I talked to all these different people. And the first person he talked to was like, yeah, so me, like these three of us were thinking of doing this Jeremy vote. And he's like, okay, thank you, pretending like he didn't know. And he goes to the next person and they're like, we're going to do this Jeremy vote. And he's like, okay, thank you, pretending like he didn't know. So it's kind of like he was making each person think that, you know, he was on the outs, completely on the outs. Thank you so much for sharing this information with me. But really, he'd been putting in so much work and talking to so many people that he really was able to get himself into this tribe when there was a little bit of a crack there.
Mm-hmm. And of course, he also has this bit of an advantage of already knowing Zucker. He has that knowledge of someone he's played with previously, who in the early days of Exile Island, like we were working with Andrew a bit, trying to figure things out, especially post-swap in Exile Island, when Andrew, Zucker, and I were the people from the original Alexa tribe who were still together. And we see here this idea of like, Jeremy was one of the first names thrown out early on by that original Fumo tribe, right? It was him and Austin were kind of on the outs. They were left out of the vote. Jeremy, of course, is told what the vote's going to be right before tribal council for like tribe cohesion and things like that. But it becomes, and yes, Corey goes in the middle, but we really see here this danger of being a first name brought up.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, when you're an early name that's brought up in a vote, how do you navigate so further along it doesn't become like an easy default vote name?
You know, that's interesting because, you know, because looking at the tribe of five, you would think being on the heavy four that you don't have to worry about your name being said, right? Because you're coming into this, but knowing that Andrew and Zucker had that previous relationship, I think was a key misstep for the rest of the original Fumo tribe, because it's hard to negate any of those previous relationships. And so you really have to take that into consideration when you're with such a small group. And so I know I said it's quick play with five, but it also takes a while to get to a decision, like a final decision, because everyone's sidestepping one another. And so when the first name is put out there, it's really easy to latch onto. And so if Jeremy had no idea that his name was being said, like there's no way around trying to problem solve that. And so, you know, there's, like I said, little room to hide on five, but when you leave out that piece of the equation of the previous gameplay, sometimes that's the key.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to this next moment. Like I said, like they had that off day, because, and it's in quotation marks, because we did reintroduce the high rollers room for Monte Carlo. And there's no way we as production could ever have predicted this would go down the way it did, because we were ready for this to be such a mess. We wanted it to be a mess. We planned this high rollers room, which had DCP trivia as the challenge. We had been planning it for so long. We had set it all up. We had put the questions were literally shared on Instagram for anyone who was paying enough attention. In the 7 weeks leading up to All Stars, we focused on a week or on a season every week. And we did we had Kyle's recaps of everything. We broke down the players and the relationships. We really wanted our players to be prepared for All Stars. And at the end of every week, we posted a Sporkle quiz.
Mm-hmm.
We posted a Sporkle quiz that had 10 questions about each season. And for this trivia, we just took 2 questions from each of those Sporkle quiz. That's how these questions were determined. That's where you can play these questions. You can go onto Sporkle. You can still do these quizzes to see how well you would have done in the high rollers room. But the big difference we wanted to make between this high rollers room and the one in Monte Carlo is in Monte Carlo, everyone came in one at a time. They got to make their decision.
Ooh, yeah.
We wanted more chaos this time. We wanted people to know what was going on. So what would happen? Everyone would come to the high rollers room. They probably assume it was similar to Monte Carlo. They'd be let in one at a time. They'd go from there. That is not the case. What was supposed to happen was everyone was supposed to show up at the same time, and everyone was going to know everyone who was there. No one was going to know who won. No one was going to know who lost. All of the questions would have been submitted secretly through Messenger, so that no one is saying answers out loud. And someone would win this extra vote and someone would lose an extra vote, but only the people who won and lost would know who it was. But you would know everyone who was there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So you could use that to your advantage strategically. You could say, oh, well, this person was also there. They did this, et cetera, et cetera. And then what do we see happen? Only one person shows up.
Yeah, we were so surprised. Okay, so we were doing like within prod, we were doing like an over under, like how many people are gonna show up tonight, over under. And I was like, literally everyone is gonna show up. Why not? And then as the day went on, we kept hearing like more and more people be like, I'm not going. And I was like, what? Maybe we'll get 3. And then we got 1.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really weird seeing that like Mike's the only person to go. And we see these different strategies from these other tribes, right? We have it was really interesting watching the strategy kind of evolve throughout the day of everyone being like, okay, we're just gonna like have Zoom calls conveniently when this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So we know someone doesn't go to the high rollers room. We see that with I mean, the new Ignis tribe, they didn't have to worry about it because Jeremy had a raid he had to do, which he was doing on Twitch. So they could all be on a meeting together and watch that, support Jeremy and everything, but also know their intended target wasn't going to go get this advantage.
Yeah.
We had the new Fumo tribe. You don't see it in the episode. In the episode, you see Simmons sitting there talking to Sarah during it. But Maddie, right before that, was on a call with Sarah talking to her about everything, talking about the option of like maybe possibly throwing out Mike's name. And right before the high rollers room started, Maddie's like, Sarah, you should go talk to Simmons right now. And then Sarah hops on that call with Simmons. So Simmons now knows Sarah's not at the high rollers room. And then, the Osa tribe's also doing similar things. So it's so interesting to see that this is the strategy here. It's interesting that these people would not risk. It seemed like people were more concerned with the possibility of losing a vote rather than the possibility of gaining an advantage. We see it. There was a lot of talk with in Sarah's exit interview. She mentioned that her reasoning behind not going to the high rollers room was because she had already been talking to Maddie and Simmons about like possibly going on Mike and working together. And if she didn't have a vote, there was no way that could happen. Mm-hmm. So it was that risk. More people focused on the risk rather than the reward. And because of that, Mike goes to this high rollers room. He's the only one there. Quite simply, the person with the lowest score was going to lose their vote. The person with the highest score was going to win an extra vote. Well, if Mike's the only person there, Mike, we have 14 questions for you. Get one of them right. You have an extra vote. And sure enough, for maximum entertainment value, Mike goes on a losing streak here right away. He's not doing so hot. He does finally get to the question about me, and it knows the answer. So I'm just going to take that one.
Andrew Denson was the only one that Andrew Denson knew the trivia. He was like ready for it. I don't think anyone else was.
So in this case, when we're looking at this risk reward situation, you're in a tribe of 5. Would you have gone to the high rollers room here? Not knowing what it is. You don't know it's trivia, right? But you do know that there's a risk and a reward associated with it.
I think it definitely depends on where I stand in the 5. So if I were in Sarah's position, I would have gone. I think just being the one, it's you either you're going to get an advantage or I'm on the bottom anyway. Like, what can I lose except to try? And then, if it doesn't turn out in my favor, then I can scramble and come up with something after that. But if I'm the one of 4 or 1 out of 5 that's solo on my tribe, I would have probably gone to risk it. If I'm in that 4, good for Mike for showing up, but that's also some security in knowing that he's in the majority on that tribe. So it's worth the risk. I remember I got slack on Trinity Falls for going after the advantage instead of immunity when we got to individual challenges. And I was like, well, yeah, because I don't know where I stand. And yes, immunity is great, but I'd rather play knowing I have an advantage.
Also, if if you have an idea that you're not going to do well at the challenge, then why even do it?
Exactly. Yeah. Especially if you know what the challenge is ahead of time. Like
I know.
Feet and ball and
one of those, the stack
balls. I was like, absolutely not. So, but also I think the factor of not knowing what the challenge is, had I known it was trivia, I might not have shown up. But, I think it was good on Prod to keep it a secret because there could have been chaos. There was definitely a recipe for chaos. But people took that off day seriously, it sounds like.
Yeah,
they did. And that's the thing, is like we call it an off day because there's no like scheduled thing that everyone has to be at. But these players were playing nonstop. They were still talking to each other the entire day. Even in this pre-merge section of the game, when tribes would win challenges, there were still calls happening like 24/7. People were just talking to each other all the time. So Mike wins an extra vote, and he immediately tells Maddie about it. And his thought process here, I get it, because he's in a position, like he knows Austin and Simmons are incredibly close. It makes sense for Mike to make a move here. Like he's in a position, he has a position of power because he has this extra vote. He can use it to, make things move for him, but he needs his help to do it because an extra vote, he's still just 2 votes on a tribe of 5, right? So at best, him by himself, 2 votes against 4 votes. Not great. So he tells Maddie, hoping to bring her in, and he divulges, Austin and Simmons are incredibly close. They know each other. They are literally both listed as Ian's brothers on Facebook. Like they're tight. They're incredibly tight. And Maddie makes the decision to play her honest, truthful game, her committed game to Simmons. She goes tell Simmons, hey, this is what Mike has. He has an extra vote. He's working against it. He's trying to get me against you guys. And all hell breaks loose on this female tribe. We see a little bit of conversation about should we vote Mike, should we vote Sarah? What's the best way to approach this? Mike comes up with this really intricate story about what he actually won was an idol that lasts as many days as questions he got right, or as many rounds as questions he gets right. And that's really intricate. Mike, I don't even think production would have come up with that type of advantage. That's a really complicated, but it's smart. It's a smart idea what he's doing here to an extent. There are parts where I begin to question Mike's thought process when he says, when I'm not going to play it. Like those are the times where it gets a little iffy. You're like, I quoted, on myself with my second idol in Exile Island, I said, I am playing my idol to show trust because you all know I have it and you expect me to play this. So I don't know if I feel like you're really showing trust by not playing an idol.
Yeah. Anytime someone's like, oh, I'm not going to play my idol, I'm like, okay, you don't have an idol.
Yeah. It's just one of those moments where it's like, okay, I guess you don't have one then. But there's so much chaos here. And in the end, we get to this vote and we see that Maddie still votes for Mike and everyone else votes for Sarah. And this might seem like Simmons is like pulling another fast one on Maddie, not voting with her. But Maddie and Simmons did sit down and talk about this beforehand. They're like, if in the case Mike does in fact have an idol, and he like plays it on Sarah to save Sarah, or if he plays it on himself, whatever. This way, if he plays it on Sarah, there is absolutely zero way Mike can force people to go to rocks by tying the vote.
Yeah.
So I understand the logic behind it. It also concealed their relationship more, but they're kind of at a point where they kind of need to expose this relationship to the rest of the people on the tribe so that they can work with them moving forward. We see that kind of come to a head in the next episode, but it makes sense the way this vote kind of goes down. And we see Maddie make this comment at tribal council asking for safety. We saw Zucker mention it earlier in the episode about all these words and email leading up to like this phrase. But let me tell you, Zucker and Maddie, you're too fast. You're too fast. You gotta wait. You haven't gotten it all yet. You're getting ahead of the game here. Then we switch over to the Ignis tribe. It's a pretty standard tribal council, except Andrew Denson is in the bathroom stall.
Oh,
during
yeah.
the tribal council. Interesting place to do tribal from, but if you have to be at tribal at a certain time and there's nowhere else to go, like I guess the bathroom stall is the one that gives you the most privacy. So I understand the decision. Just a funny little moment there. Of course, we see Jeremy go here. Jeremy, of course, has a long-standing relationship with production, as having been a former production member, playing in Yazao Islands. And we see Sarah go on the Fumo tribe, which is unfortunate. One of the other things, Maddie mentions it briefly, but there was a moment before we even started planning All-Stars that Maddie and I went down to Seattle for a concert, and we were supposed to meet up with Sarah. We were actually supposed to meet up with Sarah, but the chaos of the concert made it so that we didn't get a chance to. So Maddie and Sarah actually did have that connection, and we're really working together, talking and getting a chance to like speak to each other and really build that relationship. So much so that Maddie and Sarah have actually met in person at this point.
Yeah.
Sarah made a trip up to Vancouver a little while ago and spent some time hanging out with Maddie. So I guess we should move on to this next episode, though, because we never stop here at DCP. We keep going. We keep going. We're still in this post swap. We have people. We have Mike talking about this last vote. We have Simmons talking about the fact that Maddie and Austin aren't really talking to each other.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting because Austin was originally voted out of the Fumo tribe because, and he was told at tribal council that he wasn't making connections enough. He wasn't talking to people enough. He wasn't talking game enough with people. And we get this conversation with Simmons saying, Maddie and Austin are talking to each other. And Simmons comes up with this idea to tell Austin that Maddie did in fact get an idol at the last tribal council when she said that phrase to like coerce Austin into thinking Mike is a better vote here. It's very interesting. It's a weird dynamic. I don't have an excuse for it. I don't. Because you would think my closest ally from Exile Island and my literal biological sister would be able to connect over something, right? If only they had one thing that connected the two of them together. I don't know what it could be.
I don't know.
I don't know what could bring those two together.
Yeah, their communication was pretty awkward.
We also get this long segment here of Shea breaking down what he perceives all the relationships to be in the game.
Oh, yes.
Some of them are right. Some of them are not so right. So, Carrie, walk me through this. What is, if you're Shea, like, if you're so confident you know what's going on, but you kind of admit you don't with, like, some of, like, the Austin Maddie Simmons of it all.
Yeah.
Like,
this is so fun.
What brings about this type of confessional?
It's like, this is so good. This is like, so it's kind of like Lex's murder wall.
Yeah.
But instead of
word bomb.
Instead of Lex's murder wall, it's like this dry erase board, and he's like circling things and erasing things and like grouping people together and moving things around. And he's dressed up like a professor. Like he literally is like the Professor Shea.
Harry, does Prod have a running time on how long this confessional went? Like how long did this
It's just over 6 minutes.
It was like 6 minutes.
Okay, it felt longer.
Okay, and McKenna was like, "This is so good, though." Like, usually McKenna doesn't include a confessional that's more than like, I feel like 3 minutes is like pushing it.
Yeah.
But she was like, "Oh, but this is like so good."
Yeah, I mean, it definitely shows this character of Shea, and like it's
so
why we all love
funny.
Shea so much. It's why we keep bringing Shea back. He is such a character. He's so fun. And despite the fact that like some of his reads may be a little off based on what we've seen from the other tribes and everything, I like him going for it here. I like him going for it and being like, you know
really
what,
commits.
this is what's happening.
Yeah, he definitely commits. It's so funny. I'm always looking forward to his confessionals.
So we get into a classic DCP challenge here from our long games, the DCP 4x4. And things are a little different this time because in previous 4x4s, we've had, you know, tribe member A does this, B does this, C does this, sequentially everything. But this time we change things up and we take one of our classic challenges of holding the dice between the pencils. And we have the first person on the tribe has to do that while the second and third people complete their tasks, right? So the other tasks, of course, are again another classic DCP with a card pull of the solo cups, and then we have them line up solo cups with ping pong balls, and they have to toss the ping pong ball and catch it in the solo cup. And the first person has to hold the dice the entire time they're doing that. And one of the weirdest things that this happens in this challenge, Simmons can't do it.
No.
Simmons, who was able to hold 6 dice in Exile Island, can't do it with 3 for some reason.
Maybe he's the common thread in all of this.
I know. Maybe he's the one reason why they keep losing. No.
Is it intentional? I don't know.
It's so interesting. And we see him get frustrated and we see him talk about it in a confessional afterwards. But this is tough. Like, it's not an easy thing. It's not a natural thing to do. The way you have to hold it, the erasers have to be pointing out. We don't want to give anyone an advantage that way. You have to hold it so that like you're not supporting the ends and pushing it in more, because we don't want that to happen. And we see him drop a couple times. They have to restart. So Fubo's going into everything with a disadvantage. Well, luckily, we get to a tangram. Apparently, people are really bad at tangrams.
I am so good at tangrams. Okay. But okay.
And I mean, like, those of us who have watched the challenge understand tangrams can be hard for people to conceptualize.
Yeah.
Especially like you get, here are these shapes, here's what they need to look like. And in this case, we have this candle they have to form, this candle that they have to build. And each of them got their tangram pieces and the like picture of what they have to make in an envelope. Let me tell you, this envelope caused a lot of problems.
It really did.
So one thing you don't understand, like Osa and Ignis kind of get to the tangram about the same time. And because of Simmons dropping dice, I would say Fumo was probably like maybe like tops like a minute behind them, maybe a little longer. So they had like a lot of time to be looking at this puzzle, working on it. It didn't get solved immediately. And part of the reason for that, Garsow dropped a piece of his tangram. Tangrams, infamously hard to complete if you do not have all the pieces.
You kind of need all the pieces for sure.
Yeah, most puzzles are that way.
Yeah.
And so that's why Osa's struggling here. And then Maddie didn't realize there was a picture that told her what shape she had to make. Maybe should listen a little more in the description, but I mean, I wasn't in that room. I don't know exactly.
I wonder what she was trying to like. I wonder if she was just trying
to make a square. She was trying to make a square.
That would, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, it wouldn't have worked.
No, it wouldn't have worked.
So she didn't realize she was supposed to be making this candle. So she's fumbling along here. Garsow's fumbling along. Eventually, Zucker does finish it. But like this tangram probably took about like, what would you say, Carrie? Like 3 or 4 minutes?
Yeah.
Like a lot longer than we anticipated. I will tell you that. A lot longer than we anticipated. Production's kind of going like, oh man, what's going on? How did we mess this up? But no, eventually Zucker solves it, gets the shape. Ignis wins immunity, sending Osa and Fumo to tribal council. And of course, it's something we didn't mention in the last episode, but one of the things we really wanted to do, we really wanted to encourage people to finish second over third in these challenges. So we devised the idea that like there's reward involved with these, right? So the winning tribe not only was immune, they got to sit in on the losingest tribe's tribal council to see some of the dynamics and stuff. Of course, they don't get to see the votes. They don't get to see exactly how things write down. They get to see all the conversation beforehand.
Sure.
Could be a huge advantage. Could be nothing burger. But that was kind of the incentive we gave here to not come last. Just to conceal things. So it's really interesting then that, you know, Fumo comes last here. And because of that, Ignis gets to sit in and watch their tribal council. So we get into everything post-tribal. And the big things we see, like, yes, we finally see Austin and Maddie talking. Let me tell you, that conversation, super awkward. you don't understand, the audience. Like, it seemed awkward in the episode. It's more awkward outside of the episode. Because that conversation goes on for a long time. And it's a lot of them, like, not really sure what they're supposed to say to each other.
But like they're working. Okay, Simmons is like the pinnacle of this. Like they're working so closely together, they like never talked.
And that's why we see this frustrated confessional from Simmons about the fact that neither of them are talking to each other. Because if they could talk to each other, if Maddie and Austin started talking to each other, there's no doubt in Simmons' mind that the three of them could be a force moving forward in this game. And instead, like it's kind of like, you know, they're working on it. But they just can't seem to get that connection. And I think part of this might be because of Simmons' plan to tell Austin Maddie has an idol. Like, I don't like that plan that much. I think it's a bad idea. I don't like telling people you have an advantage because I think it can backfire a lot, especially when you don't have one. But I mean, speaking of idols, let's talk about the advantage that was never found on this season.
Yes.
So we wanted to do things a little differently. It was All-Stars. We wanted to harken back on a lot of seasons of DCP. And during these rounds, there was one more advantage they could find before the merge. And it was done through this clue that we sent them, that I am sharing right now. So this is the clue we gave them. It's got DCP's greatest hits, and it has this track listing. And it's got time segments here. So we Carrie, break this down for us. Carrie, what was the mentality?
This was so fun. Okay, so essentially what we did is each member of Prod, we asked them to go back and find them talking in an episode that they were in. And this was all kind of geared around Morgan's episode where she talks about her finding an idol. And so all the players really had to do was tell us which track talked about finding an idol. We were just talking about random stuff. Like mine was literally just me being like, "Hi, I'm Carrie." So it was really like, you know, you can like find an episode where you talk about anything, just don't talk about finding an idol or an advantage, because that's the important part. And so like it was, you know, to us anyways, it was clear that, you know, like the important part here was Morgan talking about finding an idol when she was in Lalimano Beach, but no one was able to find it.
Yeah, so Lo, before I disclose what people were guessing with this, what would your mentality be if you got this sent to you? What would you think to do?
I probably would have written down the names of everyone that is speaking during those tracks, taken the first letter of each of their name, tried to do some kind of scramble of a song track title, and then submitted it. Like that probably would have been my guess for
we got some of those.
Yeah, we did. Other people just took like random guesses as to like actual songs, and we on production are just like, no, copyright infringement. No, stop. Please don't say those. But yeah, no one could figure out this clue. No one could figure out. All they needed to clearly say was, it's a great start to the game. I can't complain. They would have had an advantage.
It will be in the clue graveyard.
It will. It will be in the clue. When we get to DCP Ghost Island, look out for that album track.
Ghost Island. No.
Now we know. And trivia.
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of see that happening on the English tribe, and we don't see a lot of the conversation revolving around the vote. And this is one of those hard things that happens when it comes to showing what's going on. Sometimes people say things that make it way too obvious. So we have to leave some suspense. And it had become pretty obvious at this point that Mike was going to be the person who was going home here. Austin had really started working with Simmons and Maddie a lot more closely at this point. And it was very clear Simmons was not going to let Maddie go. So there was no way Mike was getting that, which led to Mike's choice of using his extra vote on both Simmons and Austin to make sure that they could go to Rucks, the three of them, if Maddie did play an idol, and they voted the way they were supposed to. It was a weird plan. I think the plan might have been a little better if you put one vote on Maddie to ensure that there was a majority there if they voted the way they were supposed to, and then one vote on either of the two of them to make him go to Rocks with either Simmons or Austin and send the other one home automatically because they were the only one eligible for Rocks. Good old Rocks conversations, right?
My brain cannot figure out this vote.
Same.
I know I'd have to draw things. I can't figure out there was so much
with Carolyn on Survivor this week of her fingers and
yes,
drawing. That's what I would have to do even in this setting. I'd have to be okay.
I know, because they were because they didn't know if he had an extra vote or they didn't know what he had, and they didn't know if does Maddie have an idol, what does and so there was, oh gosh, it was
sometimes in modern Survivor we get to a point where we think about advantages way too much.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes the simplest plan is the best plan. And I don't think we got that from Mike, unfortunately. But you know what? I commend Mike still, because he did put a lot of thought into this vote about how to make it work. I respect him so much. We all love Mike at DCP. Carrie, you really like Mike.
I really, I wanted him to make the merge. I feel so bad about Trinity Falls. I still feel bad.
That's okay. It didn't happen.
You play the game. It's fine. It's okay. Mike seems to forget you. Everyone else seems to forget he's on Trinity Falls anyway, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's it didn't happen for him, but he's he's the best.
But I mean, let's look at the Osa tribe here, because the Osa tribe is interesting. We have a 3-2 split with Garsow kind of being in the middle because he kind of straddles both groups, although logic dictates Garsow probably won't work with the people who voted him out originally. And we see a lot of personal connections happening here. We see Karen and Kylie already know each other. They know each other outside the game. And so Karen's really stoked on that. Kylie's really stoked on that, just having that connection. It makes it easier. Again, it's looking back at what we were saying on the Ignis tribe about Andrew and Zucker, having connections with people really helps. Having ways to connect to people can really help in games. And we see them kind of glom together, start working together. Then we have, Lex and Garsow are still working together with Kylie, so it makes sense for Karen to kind of get in with that group there. Kind of leaves Brittley on the outs, but Brittley is such a sweetheart.
Mm-hmm.
She is so endearing. It's so easy to just talk to Brittley and fall in love with her and really gain a connection with her, and we see that. We see that happen. Sure. We unfortunately don't get to see moments like that happening on these Zoom calls where those connections are happening. But in the episode, we don't, because there's just so much to tell. But we see Lex get incredibly torn up about the fact that Brittley has to go here and get emotional. And this is someone he has literally known for 3 days at this point.
Yeah.
And Lex is, I got that. I had that connection too with Lex. I remember on my season, we barely had any time to talk, but when I had to bow out, he was so distraught. He's like, "Are you sure? Is there anything we can do?" And that just, he gets very attached to very especially like authentic people like
Very
Brittley.
sweet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I felt for him and Brittley.
Absolutely. It's tough. It's tough. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. And conveniently, like Survivor 44 this week kind of touched on it too with a Jamie confessional, that you play this game and yeah, you're in a game, you're cutting people, you understand this is a cutthroat game, you have to vote against people, you have to blindside people, but you're also making genuine connections with these people. These are people who are on calls, especially in a long game format. These are people on calls with each other for hours at a time, just getting to know each other. They get to know about everything in their lives. There's a lot of personal connection happening where people are just getting closer together. So even knowing someone just for 3 days, it can be really hard voting them out. And like my heart goes out to both Lex and Austin Garsow, who both, they're tearing up, they're crying as Brittley leaves because it's such an emotional vote. It's something you don't want to do.
Yeah, that was hard for them.
Yeah. But like let's end the episode on a happy note here, because before we get into before we get into our game and our MVPs, we do get the merge. The merge happens. We have 11 castaways here. They've made it to the merge. It's Friday night. We give them the night off. Technically, not really. They've just done tribal council, and they have to get prepared for the mini day, starting with this next round. So they have the night to kind of discuss things. We'll see how that all unfolds next week. Lo, where do you think people are standing going into the merge?
It feels like they're still aligned with their original tribes. Like I haven't seen much movement beyond that, maybe a little bit on the Ignis tribe, but I think I have a suspicion going into the swap, it's going to be a split between the original Ignis and original Fumo.
Okay, Carrie, I can't ask you this question because you know what happens. But yeah, no, that's a good point. And we have 6 original Fumo and 5 original Ignis. With the Austin swaps being, I think, the original tribes at this point is the safer thing to say. But yeah, Fumo is going into this merge with a numbers advantage.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd be interested to see if they play to that, depending on how immunity goes with this first tribal.
Yeah. Well, let's have some fun before we finish this game off, before we finish this episode off here. Lo, you're a dog lover. You must love dogs, right?
Must love
dogs.
There
we go. And Carrie's obviously a dog lover. Carrie infamously picks people. Sometimes when she can't make up her mind in our production drafts, she picks people based on who has the cutest dog. But you know what? It's a good strategy.
I think that's sound decision making.
Yes.
So because of that, we're at the merge. We have 7 pre-merge people to reflect on. I want each of you to assign a dog breed to each of our voted out castaways. So let's start with our first boot. Let's start with Lydia. What dog breed would you associate with Lydia?
Oh my God. Okay. I was not prepared for this. I was prepared for assign a dog breed to the people who were voted out this week.
See, I did everybody. Like
I have Carrie gives me these, and like I have to change it just a little bit when I know she's on the episode.
Oh my
Otherwise,
God.
she's prepared too much. Got to put her on the spot.
Okay, well, we can tag team this.
Okay. We're gonna do 4.
Okay.
Because we're gonna do 4 people. We're gonna do Brittley and Jeremy.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have them?
I do.
Okay, great. Because I don't.
Somewhat. Okay, so I spent a lot of time thinking about this actually. And for Brittley, okay. I think as Brittley is just like so sweet and like very like loyal and like everyone loves her and is, enthusiastic about things. And to me, she seems like very like a lab, right? Like she's something like a lab. Yes.
I was thinking that too. I could see that.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. So mad love for Lydia, our idol queen from Trinity Falls. just the brilliance, and she was always on the hunt for idols. I could tell she was also doing some work while she was still here. I thought of an English Springer Spaniel for her.
That's what I have a Springer.
I
Maybe.
know. I said having Carrie, because I was like, I don't know. I think that's a Lydia dog. Like, just like always on the hunt, super smart, like just super friendly too, like really easy to get along with.
Oh, sweet.
And then
Okay,
like,
so
Carrie's dog.
So for Mike, I was thinking, and this is like, might sound like you might be like, what? Okay. So I feel like Mike is like a little bit of a pit bull because like,
That's what I was thinking too.
right. Because he comes off as like having this like hard exterior a little bit, but he's like the nicest. Like he's so sweet.
I agree.
He's just like the best. Okay. We have next.
I love that. I was okay, so I was thinking about Corey, and on his last episode and everything, he was like all of his plans and scheming. I thought of a bloodhound for him because I thought he was like out for blood. But that was my immediate reaction, and I hadn't seen his previous season, so I wasn't sure. But from what I could tell on this season, that was a match for him.
That's a good one. I was trying to figure out Jeremy, and like I feel like there's not a good one for Jeremy. And the best I could come up with is a Chihuahua, but not for the reasons that people think. Like, I was thinking Chihuahua because he's a little bit shy, a little bit introverted. He's like much more like a one-on-one kind of person. And like Chihuahuas are like that. Like they have they're one person that they're really attached to. And then they're like super loyal to them. And I feel like that's like Jeremy, but he's not like what people think of like most Chihuahuas. I just like couldn't think of like what would be right.
I was trying to come up with a good one for Sarah too. And only thing I could think of for her was her dog, Rory. I think she is her dog.
Yeah, no, I was like, okay.
I could put up a photo of Rory right here so we could see. There's I think they're a match made in heaven, the two of them.
I was thinking the same thing. And another thing I was thinking about Sarah, like the way that she talks, she's very like this point. Oh no, hold on this point. Oh no, hold on this other point. And I was like, it's just like any kind of puppy. It's like, I'm interested in this. Hold on a second. This other thing.
Yes, definitely.
Is that everybody?
We also have Danny. Danny's the last one we have.
Danny.
Danny. Okay, so Danny, I think I thought of a golden retriever, and not just like I feel like that's a typical answer, but I think the way the episode played out, because he got a little blindsided. I think when I think of Goldens, I think like they're super focused, like can really good at getting trained in things, but sometimes are like a little miss a piece of something.
Yeah,
and so
sure.
I think it was like a little bit like so zoned in, and then it was a little aloofness, which I think of when I think of golden retrievers. So that's what I thought for this.
Okay. That's a good one. Oh my God, this was so much fun.
Awesome. That was so much fun. But we're at the end of our episode now. So let's talk MVPs.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay. I'm ready.
Go.
Okay. So Carrie, we'll start with you, Carrie. Who are you giving your MVP point to this week?
Okay. We have not talked this episode much about Karen, but it has to be her. Okay. So Karen started this game like definitely at the bottom.
Yeah.
And then we see in this episode that, then she fought her way into an alliance. And then we see in this episode that she's like finally like connected with Kylie, which is like exactly where she wanted to be. She and Kylie are so close. And so she's done a lot of work to get where she is. So my MVP goes to Karen.
Hey, Lo, who are you giving your MVP point to?
I was a little torn. I was originally thinking Shea because of, the master map that he has created. But I think I have to give it to Garsow on this one because I think he's also kind of scrapping, or at least he with this swap, he ended up in a better place than he started. And so I think he's playing that to his advantage. Being the first one voted out, and he's still playing and he's still making moves and things like that. So I think I have to give it to Garsow this week.
All right. I like both of those options. They're both working really hard. And but you're just giving too much love to the Osa tribe here.
That's fair.
Too much love. I'm going to show a little nepotism this week, though. I wish it
Oh my God. Maddie.
You know what? I've
As
been
you
so
should.
good not choosing her so far, and I'm not intending to anymore. Never more. I will use one.
This is your
This
one
season. I'm
vote.
using it on
Your
this
one
week because
vote.
I think
She had a
I-
good week.
She
Yeah.
really has leveraged this relationship with Simmons to this point, to the point where previously we were talking about like that failed fraternity alliance of No Moss with the Exile Boys and Mike. She swaps onto a tribe with them, all except for Andrew, who's on a different tribe, and gets Sarah. Easy vote. Mike shows that he thinks so highly of Maddie, he is wanting to put her in the middle, like use her to flip the power structure on that tribe. She finds herself in a good position there. She leverages this relationship with Simmons so that even when this tribe has to cannibalize itself, this alliance, this group of four who are incredibly tight at this point, have to cannibalize themselves. She's not the one going. I think she's in a great spot at this point going into the merge. I think that Simmons clearly thinks really highly of her, and their relationship can really propel them far in this game if they continue it. We see her and Austin finally connecting. I just think she finds herself in a really good spot going into the merge.
Yeah, you got to give her a point for that conversation with
Austin.
Moorhead.
She grinned and bared it.
That's fair.
Well, there you have it. Lo, Carrie, thank you so much for joining me on the Sunday show this week. And of course, thank you all viewers for watching us talk through this third week of Rites of Passage All-Stars. Continue watching each of those episodes. They come out every Monday and Thursday. We're heading into, let me tell you, we're a mini now. The entire game has changed. We're at the merge. It's a mini. We're in for a fun week this week. Of course, we have our exit interviews coming up on Wednesdays and Saturdays. We are so excited. Make sure you like and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram. Join the Facebook group. We're so happy to have you, and we will see you next week.